One of Frederick Douglass's most famous quotes was, "What to a slave is the 4th of July?" The 4th of July here symbolizes more than just a national holiday. It symbolizes Americans rejoicing at their freedom and at their liberty. But as Douglass said, what is the celebration of freedom to those who are not free? In today's society, slavery, in the form of the textbook definition, may not exist, but its implications still do. There are multiple minorities that are still facing the same oppression and stripping of freedom that slaves experienced in the past. Frederick Douglass would be disappointed in the state of America as it is today. When looking at the state of African Americans in today's society, we see that they are being systematically oppressed. One of Frederick Douglass's main focuses was on education. He worked to gain an education despite the fact that African Americans earning an education in his time was absolutely forbidden. Even after he gained that education, he risked his life by working to teach other African Americans. In today's age, we see that African Americans have far less access to high-quality curriculums or to highly qualified teachers. The notion that separate but equal no longer exists is a fallacy. Though schools are not segregated by strict black and white lines, there is segregation due to the affordability of living in areas that have good education systems. In Newark, for instance, there are public schools and charter schools. The public schools are filled with unqualified teachers and low-quality curriculums, as well as low funding. The charter schools, which are publicly funded but privately operated, are not much better and operate more as a corporation instead of institutions of education. This difference in quality of education between minority cities like Newark and majority white cities leads to institutionalized disparities between the races. It is important that as change agents, we continue the work of Frederick Douglass in trying to level out the playing field in education for our African American brothers and sisters, because education is the key to success. Not only are African Americans experiencing oppression in education, but they are experiencing a new kind of slavery through incarceration. The 13th Amendment states neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. African Americans went from being bound by slavery to being bound by mass incarceration. According to the NAACP, on average, African American men are incarcerated at a rate of more than 5 times the amount of whites. Once incarcerated, African Americans are stripped of their rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the same way slaves were in the time of Frederick Douglass. This reality would truly disappoint Frederick Douglass, who worked his whole life to abolish slavery. Frederick Douglass was unique in that he not only stood up for the rights of African Americans like himself, but he was on the front lines in the fight for women's rights as well. Frederick Douglass attended the first ever convention for women's rights in Seneca Falls, where he worked with Elizabeth Cady Stanton to come up with a resolution that would allow women the right to vote. He was one of the first to understand the term of intersectionality, and he ensured that these minorities and oppressed groups would work together to make a difference. It is important that we learn from Frederick Douglass the importance of working together. Frederick Douglass once said, "I didn't know I was a slave until I found out I couldn't do the things I wanted." This is the state of many citizens in the United States. We believe that America is perfect because we are told that we have freedom, justice, and liberty for all, but we cannot simply accept these ideas without questioning how they are being implemented. These rights are reserved for the few that America sees deserving of these rights. There are many minorities, African Americans, women, Hispanics, Muslims, that are not given these simple rights for the reason that they are different, and some people see them as un-American. We, as Americans, must question what it means to be American. We have a history of oppression towards minority groups, evident in our history of slavery. We must take initiative and fight the same way that figures like Frederick Douglass fought. We must speak up for our rights and for the rights of others the same way Frederick Douglass spoke up for abolition in the time of slavery, and for the rights of women in a time where they were not allowed the right to vote. We must do better.